Hello and welcome to Freelancing for Journalists.
Hello, I'm Emma Wilkinson.
And I'm Lily Cantor.
So we are storming through Series 11 here. I've been really inspired by some of the topics we've covered recently. We've had some really good issues, and I'm sure this episode will be no different. Each week we discuss an issue affecting freelance journalists and chat through the problems and solutions with the help of two experienced guests. And this series, we're also experimenting with YouTube, like the cool kids that we are.
Yes, it's all very exciting over on YouTube. So today's episode is about rejection and resilience. I think Emma and I have gone through plenty of this, particularly the last week. So we're going to be talking about how freelancers deal with this on a regular basis. And, it's very much easier said than done, really. So we're going to talk you through some of the strategies on how to manage this side of your job.
Yes, and as always, we like to get off to a positive start by talking about our freelance win of the week. Lily, you go first.
Yeah, so mine, it connects a little bit to an episode we did actually on social media last week, but I was trying to find some sources to speak to, and they were kind of connected with organisations. So I was like, well, I'll just go direct to the organisations. I'll try some charities. Contacted loads of people. Got nothing except for one organisation. When I put in a query, they just automatically signed me up to their mailing list, which really annoyed me. So I took to Twitter, and literally with a minute of putting a call out on Twitter, I had a load of really good sources come back to me, including some of the charities I've been trying to contact through their own websites and phone numbers. It was Twitter that came to my aid in the end, and now I've got lots of great people to speak to. So that was my one. And again, be resilient, try lots of different ways of contacting the right people.
Yes, always have a plan B. And don't, if you want something doing, do it yourself. I think this is my constant refrain. Yeah, so mine is this week also about getting in touch with a contact. But this is someone that I have spoken to quite a few times over the years. And I thought, they'd be a good person for a quote for a news story. But ended up, they weren't able to help me with that, but they were telling me about something that had been happening with them recently. And I ended up with potentially something far more juicy. I can't say anything yet, but there's something maybe to look into there. So it just show how beneficial it can be building those relationships over time, that she felt comfortable to kind of say, well, this is where I am at the moment. And if you ever want someone to speak on this, I might be a good person. So yeah, I felt quite good that I'd spent the time gaining her trust, I suppose, over a period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great when you get those little tip-offs coming through from those contacts, especially when you're not expecting it. Okay, it's time to introduce our guests. First up, we have Kate Chapman, an experienced freelancer who's worked for herself since 2011. Kate covers a variety of topics, including countryside issues and rural affairs, real life and human interest, celebrity interviews, women's issues, parenting, and more. And she has bylines in national newspapers, glossy magazines, and local publications.
And we also have with us Melissa Hobson, a freelance marine science, conservation, and sustainability writer. Melissa's a journalist, copywriter, interested in telling stories. She's also got experience in PR and working with NGOs to help them with communication.
Yeah, so hi both. Thanks very much for coming on the podcast today. Kate, we're going to kickstart with you, and we're going to get right into it and talk about how important you think resilience is as a freelance journalist. So let's get to it. How important is resilience, and what does it mean? What does resilience actually mean to you as a term?
Well, it's hugely important. And to be honest, I don't think until I started freelancing, I realised how important it would be. Just for a bit of context, I came to freelancing having worked on a bi-weekly newspaper in Lincolnshire. So I was constantly busy, always stories coming in, and there was always stuff going on. I made the decision to freelance because it fitted around the lifestyle. My daughter was about to turn 1, so I decided that I would stay at home and work. And I had no contacts outside of Lincolnshire. I was quite naive, really, thinking that I was going to start writing for all these publications. And to be fair, the first couple of publications I pitched to, I did manage to get some commission. But from there on, it's been quite a roller coaster. And everybody says feast and famine, and it very much has been that. But I think the more you do it, the more you realise that everybody is in the same boat, and that the commissions, they do sort of come and go, and you just got to stick with it. The more you pitch, the more commissions you will land. It's perseverance as well.
Absolutely. And you do really get used to that, knowing just that you will have those periods where your pitches don't seem to be, just seem to be going into a big black hole somewhere, but that something will come good at some point. I suppose that comes with experience, doesn't it? And Melissa, I'd like to ask you about that as well. What factors do you think can help build that resilience when you work for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as Kate says, it's a bit of a numbers game. There are going to be those pitches going into the black hole, but also, I suppose, the more that happens, the more you get used to it and the more resilient you can be. My background, unlike Kate, and I've kind of done the opposite from a lot of writers, is come from PR sector into journalism rather than vice versa. So in my previous career, when I was working for PR agencies, there was a lot of pitches going to black holes. So I think that gave me quite a thick skin before I came into freelancing, which for me has been really handy to have that basis.
Yeah, that's really fascinating that you've come from a PR background, which I imagine must be fairly excruciating when you're pitching stuff to journalists, and particularly journalists who are not necessarily very receptive or helpful. I know I'm not when it comes to a lot of PRs. So yeah, it would be really interesting to hear some more about that in a bit. But Kate, if we can just come back to you, because we've talked about already that you might have dry periods of work or times when your pitches are going unanswered, but how do you actually handle that? Like, how do you build resilience and kind of avoid this feeling of rejection?
I think one of the things is you can't take it personally. It's not you being rejected as a person. It's just that idea for that story or that moment. So I've sort of been through the cycle several years now, and there are times of year when pitches don't get picked up. People have not got the budgets to commission, or somebody else has pitched a similar idea, or editors are just inundated with pitches. There's one that I write for quite a bit, and I know, having spoken to him, that he says he gets hundreds of emails a day, and that's not just from freelancers, that's from other things. And he's got quite a small team. He's working on his own writing, trying to get a magazine out, and I'm bombarding him with pitches, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, to see if I can land a commission. And I have to leave it a week or 2. And it's following up. It's being resilient, knowing that you can just go back and say, I've sent this a couple of weeks ago, not heard back from you. Don't take it as a no immediately. You need to have landed quite a lot of commissions and follow it up with people and just giving them a little nudge and a reminder. And it sort of depends when that can land in their inbox. I mean, some editors are going through their emails first thing in the morning, some do it last thing at night. And it's just trying to find the times when they're open to pitches and things like that. So that can be handy as well. And like, when the dry spells come, a lot of the time I find myself just sort of sending a few emails around those editors that I write regularly for and saying, I'm available for work. I've got a couple of ideas for you. If they're not what you're looking for, is there anything in particular you are looking for, or case studies that I can find for you? It's keeping the conversation going, I think, and just not giving up.
Yeah, because I think there are so many factors. As you might just be sat there thinking, oh, they hate my idea, they don't want to use me, but actually they might never have seen the idea. Their budget might have disappeared. They might just have over-commissioned and be completely full, so not even looking at those. Or it might just be a quirk of timing, or there's so many things that factor into why a commission could get picked up or not getting picked up. So like you say, it's like having that almost scientific approach to it of, oh, maybe I emailed them at this time of day last time, maybe I'll do it this time of day, or not giving in on those ideas. And Melissa, you, like Kate, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you think your ability to handle rejection, whatever that looks like, has sort of changed over time? Does it improve as you grow in confidence as a freelancer?
I think it does. I think it depends on the day. Some days I'm feeling more fragile than others and it can be a bit tougher. I think especially when you're just having pitches going into the void and you're not getting any feedback. When you've got a relationship with someone and they can let you know that it's not working because they've got to go on holiday and they've not got time to edit anymore, or they don't have the budget or whatever, that can really help you reframe and maybe pitch that story to someone else or tweak it or whatever. But yeah, I think over time and having more experience helps you have that thicker skin and get on with it. And I think another thing that helps is speaking to other freelancers who go through the same thing. I think people think when they see a writer who has all these amazing bylines that they would love to have in their portfolio, that person's just, firing out all these pitches and everyone is getting commissioned. And I think when you realize that's not the case, all of us are going through that rejection as well. I think that really helps you not take it personally and realize it's just part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I know we've had Amelia Tate on a couple of times, and she's one of those people that comes up with such kind of quirky, interesting ideas, and she sometimes has a flurry of stories out. But she was talking about plenty of ideas she's had that just don't get picked up, or she has to wait for the right time. She might be sitting on them for a year or two until that kind of topic is trending again. So yeah, even people that we might admire and see as really successful are going through exactly the same thing. So I think it's really useful to remind ourselves of that. And again, Kate, like you were saying, a really practical piece of advice is try contacting editors at different times of day, or asking them like, when is the best time to send you pitches? It might be they have a regular news conference where they want to take ideas to, and when is that? I've certainly done that with editors. Like I know some editors, first thing in the morning is great, like 8 o'clock, kind of whether they're on the bus, from London on the bus into work, they're looking at their emails. But others, there's absolutely no point sending anything in the morning. They just do not see it. And towards the end of the day is a much better time, and towards the end of the week sometimes as well. I should make a note of it because I kind of sometimes do forget which editor. It's almost like when an editor replies to you, it's worth noting the day and the time that they replied to you, and seeing if there's a pattern there, because I think that can be useful. But I guess, we've talked a bit about, rejection is normal and being resilient is kind of all part and parcel of the job. But obviously it can, it can impact on you personally, on your own sort of mental health, and also the sort of health of your business. So I'm just wondering, Kate, if you've got any sort of thoughts on, are there any warning signs if you're not handling things well and you do perhaps need to do something about how to be more resilient?
I was thinking back to times when I have found myself overwhelmed because I've just not worked to say no to anything. And that can be almost as bad as getting no work. So, and stressing out about things, it affects my sleep. And then that doesn't have a very good effect for the work because it's obviously not firing on all cylinders. So there's sort of coming at it from both angles. But I think the idea is trying to balance it and knowing when to sort of just step back a bit and perhaps having other things like little side hustles or other sort of avenues of work that you can go down. I suppose I'm a bit fortunate in that I've got one or two other things that when the work isn't coming in the freelance work, I've got other things that I can go and do. I do my husband's accounts, he's a farmer, so I have that work to do as well, which I have to factor in. And then I have a bit of a side hustle selling some artwork. And I've also found that when I've had downtime, I've started writing a bit of children's fiction as well. So there's a lot going on there and trying to balance all that as well. So it's trying not to sort of stress out too much and just know that the commissions will come. I said about the roller coaster before, it's feast or famine. And once you get one or two bits of work starting to come in, you do find that then more does come in. So it's just try not to get too stressed about it. Having other things you can go and do, or just like going out for a walk, leaving your desk and just going for a walk and just taking some time away from it, so it's not all consuming. And I know that the people were obviously worrying about the money, whereas I'm going to pay a bill as a freelancer, and those things do wear in your mind. But you have got to sort of be balanced about it and try and make sure that you're sort of looking after yourself as well, mentally and physically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's kind of two really important things there. So the first is having lots of different bits of work that you do, so you're not relying on anyone. I think that's, really a key part of resilience as a freelancer, is you're not relying on any one income stream. So if you're only writing for one publication and that editor disappears or their budget disappears, but if you've actually got a few different strings to your bow and a few different things that you do, if at some point of the year one thing isn't working or you're not getting the kind of responses or the commissions that you're expecting, if you've got other things that you can go and do to practically keep yourself busy, keep the ideas flowing, that's going to be really helpful to you, I think. And I think the other thing there, and I want to come to you, Melissa, on this, is that kind of mindset where you're thinking of a plan B, that you're self-motivated and you're sort of thinking, right, this isn't working out for me. I might need to try a different tactic. I might need to try a new way of reaching out to people, a new way of connecting with new editors. Is there a different way that I can try that I've not done before? How important do you think that is in kind of just thinking, right, I'm not just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results, but I'm just gonna take a new direction.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think one of the things that I try and do as well is, as well as looking at new editors, new contacts, people to pitch, often when I'm feeling stuck and, not quite sure where to go next in terms of, pitches or finding work, it's often that I'm spending too much time at my laptop. So actually I try and flip it a little bit and think, okay, well, I need to get away from the computer. Where are the stories? Who can I go and meet in the type of work that I do? Are there any conservation volunteers locally that are doing, I don't know, a litter pick or something like that, to get me away from that, the to-do list and all of the things on the laptop, and get out, get active. For me, particularly get into nature, because that's when the ideas come. When I'm sitting staring at my laptop for 2 hours trying to think of a story is 99% of the time not when I come up with a good story. So kind of trying to prise myself away from that and doing things in a different way that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about idea generation is, an idea could strike you at any time. So you also need a way of kind of recording that and being prepared, like when it does hit you, that, quickly send yourself a voice note or an email or a text or something. So you've got that idea, and then you can come back to it at a later date and kind of, or even, then entering it into a spreadsheet and having a systematic approach so that you don't forget it, or even saving it for a later date. If it's now's not the time, then it may well be something you can come back to. So I guess that would be one tool, is kind of, is about being organized as well, so you can kind of manage your workflow and have ideas to hand when perhaps things are quieter. I suppose the other thing we've not kind of talked about is, we talked about you need to be resilient, you need to be thick-skinned, but not everyone is like that, and not everyone wants to be like that. So I'm just wondering to what extent, like, you have to be a certain type of person to do this kind of work in the first place. Not just as a freelancer, but as a freelance journalist that has kind of, added dynamics to it. Are you someone that has to be kind of self-motivated, perhaps, a good problem solver, or are these kind of skills that you can train yourself and it comes with experience? Like, how much is kind of, it's a bit chicken and egg, but, maybe for some people this just isn't the right line of work for them. I wonder if, Melissa, if I could ask you, because you've obviously come from PR as well, so it'd be interesting to kind of hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think this, as you say, it's probably a bit chicken and egg. I think self-motivation as a freelancer, and particularly a freelance writer, is something that I think you do really need to have from the off. I've had conversations with friends who are in PAYE jobs, and they've said, oh, but, how do you persuade yourself to get the work done every day? And I'm like, well, I've got bills to pay, so I have to. If you're not in that mindset to get up and go and, chase those leads, find those commissions without a line manager, telling you to do that work, then maybe this isn't the right type of job for you. But at the same time, I think there are skills that you can learn and develop. I'm not naturally very thick-skinned. That's something that I've really practiced and built, and I still work on over time. Sometimes you think you have a great pitch and you get some feedback and they've kind of tore it apart a little bit, and that can sting. And I guess it's just a case of taking a deep breath, picking yourself up again and getting on with it. So yeah, I think there's so many different personality types that are writing as freelancers. But I probably would say that motivation and that discipline to get up, find the stories and go and find that work is the one that I would say is really crucial.
Yeah, and I think what you've described there is someone who really enjoys their job. Like, I think you have to enjoy it. You have to have that kind of gut instinct for what makes a good story, and to just really be keen to tell stories, because otherwise it is going to be a bit of a grind. Because I've had that exact same thing. The number of times that people have said to me, oh, did you just watch TV all day? Oh, like, it's never even crossed my mind. This is my job. I actually really enjoy it. There are some times when I'm having to drag myself to my desk, and usually when I've got too much work on and I'm like, can't quite face it. But most of the time, I'm actually really enjoying it. So I think if you're not enjoying it, and because of that resilience is going, you're feeling a bit burnt out, you're feeling like you can't cope with it, then maybe it's time to reassess the type of work you do, because you've got skills that you could use in other areas. So maybe it's time to think about, actually, what is it about this that is making me kind of switch off from this? Kate, you've been doing this more than 10 years now. So if someone was about to go freelance, either they were going from a staff job and they're about to take that leap, or they're someone who's just starting out and they think that freelance is a good way to kind of get that portfolio going, what tips would you have for kind of getting that resilience in place from the get-go? Because obviously you don't have as much confidence when you start. It is a bit fake it till you make it. So are there things that you can put in place to try and help get that resilience going?
I think so, but to a certain extent, even 10 years on, I still very much feel that it's fake it till you make it. I still feel like I'm just playing at it a bit, even though I'm sitting here and I've got an office. I sit here every day and I'm tapping away writing stories that are going in national publications. I still don't feel like I'm doing it properly, almost, to some extent. And I think that is the perception a lot of people have. If you just said a freelancer sort of sitting at home watching TV and having a cup of tea and eating biscuits and not perhaps sort of committed as everybody thinks you are. But I think if you are going to start out, you need to be committed. I mean, I'm not talking sat at your desk 24/7 hours a day, because as we said, you can't physically maintain that, and it's not going to work for your mental health. You do need to know when to step back a bit and when to, because like the stories don't, as we said, Melissa said, the stories aren't always coming when you sit staring at the computer. So I think to start out, you need to have an idea of what kind of things you want to write. There is an idea that everybody needs to have a specialism, and you sort of focus on that. I've kind of gone the other way, because I didn't write a lot of features until I started freelancing. So I was a bit of a jack of all trades and writing about lots of things. And I think in hindsight, that's perhaps helped me, because I've got several different areas I can pitch similar stories to. I live in rural Lincolnshire. I'm a farmer's wife, so a lot of the stories I cover are farming and food related. But also I write for regional magazines, and I can pitch those ideas to those as well. And I also write for titles like Women's Weekly, and often they're looking for real life stories about female farmers. So I've got quite a broad base of topics that I cover that also go to a broad base of publication. So although having a specialism can help, I think sometimes you don't want to put yourself in too much of a niche either.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, because Melissa, you do have a niche, and I wonder, with that, whether, because it's obviously a topic you feel passionate about, do you ever find that you get really wedded to certain stories and it's very difficult to let them go if they're not being picked up? And is that all part of resilience as well, in kind of, knowing when to kind of drop an idea even though you think it's like the best story in the world?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's important to be aware of. I suppose for me, it's a bit of a strange one because I never actively chose my niche. I never thought I really want to be a marine conservation writer. It just kind of happened because I really love talking about the ocean and the stories that are going on around the ocean. I think that does sometimes mean that I can really geek out about something that everyone else is like, wait, what? I've never heard of that species, so I don't know why we care. So I do have to pull myself back sometimes and think about, would my dad care about this story in the same way as my best friend who's a marine biologist? Would someone that's not as passionate about the ocean still think it's super interesting that sharks are doing whatever, or, whales are wearing seaweed on their heads like a hat at the moment, which is just brilliant. So I think sometimes you do have to realize, okay, maybe that's not the right topic. It's maybe too niche for a lay audience. But I think for me as well, even though I'm in a hyper niche subject matter, the ocean does kind of touch everything. And there's so many studies, there's so many scientists doing cool things that actually I've found it easier over time to let those stories go because there's another one coming my way. And if you're hanging on too tightly to one particular story or one particular case study, you might miss some other timely things that are going to be coming as well. So I think that's, whatever your niche, or if you don't have a niche, being aware that, saying yes to one particular thing also means saying no to other things, and kind of having your feelers out for those stories that maybe are coming your way soon as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've found this as well, because Kate, you mentioned there about imposter syndrome. Like, do you ever feel like, because I still feel like that now from time to time. If you're doing something new, you sort of have to talk yourself into doing it, right? You're kind of giving yourself permission to do that thing. But if you're too scared of rejection, if you're too scared of getting something wrong or it not working out, that can really hold yourself back from putting yourself forward for things that you'd be great for or you would do a good job of. Kate, can you has there ever been that time where you've had to really talk yourself into, I can pitch to that place, I would do a good job of that, and kind of not letting that imposter syndrome voice take over?
Yeah, there's been a few instances, because I said when I started writing, I was doing for sort of like regional and local publications, and then I was looking at some of the bigger papers and thinking I didn't feel confident pitching to them. I was worried about the deadline's going to be too short for me to turn stuff around, and I had a bit of an issue. But there was one column in The Guardian, and I've sort of been following it for a few years. I was desperate to get a piece in, and I sort of sent a couple of pitches off tentatively. Probably didn't get the right editor to start with either, and got passed around a bit, and the ideas were a no. So that put me off from going back for a little while. But at the beginning of this year, I came across this story, which I thought that would be a perfect fit for it. Sent the idea off and got a yes back straight away. So I think you just need a bit of confidence sometimes to give yourself the boost to keep putting yourself out there. And it can be a grind, sort of sending pitches out day after day and sometimes getting nothing back. So but I do try and set myself a goal now to try and get something in this publication, or to get something in this column, and it's sort of something to aim for and keeps it fresh and keeps me making me pitch to new publications, because lazy is not the right word, but you do get comfortable writing for just the regular ones. I've got 3 or 4 that I will regularly write for. But then when they stop commissioning for whatever reason, they've got no budget or something, you're suddenly thinking, hang on a minute, I've still got bills to pay, and now I've only got 2 or 3 titles that I'm writing for at the minute. So I think you do need to keep putting yourself out there, and obviously sometimes you do have to fake it until you make it, and get the confidence just to go for it.
Absolutely. And just take the rough with the smooth, right? Even in a staff job, there are going to be times when things aren't going well, things aren't going your way. I think that's where kind of networks of freelance journalists come in really handy, because you realise that it's not just you, that everybody is kind of having these issues. And also just things like life can just get in the way, and you're sort of looking at, like Lily and I were just both saying, like, we've got like illness, family illness, like things are just feeling very chaotic and out of control. But you do, because it's just you haven't got a boss to call and say, I need today off or whatever. You just have to sort of take that deep breath and think, right, what can I manage? What can I, actually get done in this time? How can I just keep going without burning myself out? And Melissa, have you got any tips for that, really, when sort of life gets a bit tricky, but you're still trying to get those commissions and bring the money in?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me is realizing how important it is to plan ahead, particularly financially. So initially, when I first went full-time freelance, if I had a big month, I'd, put aside whatever I needed for tax and all that kind of thing, and then I'd pay myself the rest. But then the next month I might have a quiet month and think, oh, I haven't been able to pay myself very much this month. There's a bit of a worry. Whereas now I actually kind of pay myself a set salary, as it were. So if I have a massive month and I get lots of commissions and I get lots of work, I pay myself what I need to, and then I put a little bit in a buffer, so that if I do have those quiet times, because they do come, and it might be commissions not happening, or a publication that you've been writing for regularly not commissioning, not having budget, or it might be sickness or holiday or whatever, it's less of a stress knowing that actually I've still got a little bit that I can pay myself next month, I can cover my bills and those kind of things. So that's something that I'm quite conservative on that side of things, and I'm quite practical. And I think that gives me the confidence as well to really focus on getting the commissions, finding the stories, rather than spending too much time worrying about, the money and the time and how many pictures do I need to send and those kind of things. It almost frees you up to be a bit more creative, having that safety net.
Yeah. I kind of do something similar in that, although I don't pay myself like that, I have a target of like what I want to earn each month, but it's quite flexible. It's sort of between this amount and this amount. But at the same time, I don't stress about it, because I know some months I'll go over and some I'll be under. So as long as like across a year, I'm roughly hitting the middle of that target, then I feel like everything is kind of fine. So yeah, it's kind of having a system, like you say, for managing your money, so that if you can do that, you can kind of keep on top of everything else, and that really helps with your kind of resilience and your mental health and everything. And when you do have those periods of rejection, you don't have to kind of worry about them so much. So I think that's really good advice. Well, on that note, because we've had so much good advice today, but we're actually going to round up. But before we do, we're just going to ask each of you for your recommendation of a piece of work by a freelance journalist. So Kate, let's come to you. What's your recommendation?
This is a piece I saw earlier, sort of via LinkedIn, actually. It's from The Guardian Online by environmental journalist Anna Turns. And so probably not something I'd usually read, actually, but what's happened, I didn't really like that. But it caught my eye because of the headline. It was how researchers have remade the world's most widely used petrochemicals without using fossil fuel. And it was a fascinating read, really in depth, and I really enjoyed reading it, so I wanted to share that one.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Kate. And Anna is definitely a friend of Freelancing for Journalists, and we will put the link to that in our show notes. And Melissa, let's come to you. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so mine, I just thought it was quite a fun one. It's by a writer called Jason Vettel, who does pieces for National Geographic. He does lots of fun animal pieces. And the article, it's a few months old now, but it was called something like "Forget Everything You Think You Know About Pigeons." And I think it was just a really nice reminder that sometimes we're chasing these, new quirky angles, and actually there's something right under your nose that is that can be really interesting if you delve into it. So I thought that was a nice little piece by him.
Absolutely. That's really good example of just keeping that kind of news sense and story sense turned on at all times, right? And thinking just, what's a different way into a topic? That's fantastic, both. Thank you both for such practical advice today. We really appreciate it. That's been some great tips there.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I've just noticed my dog is trying to photobomb. I don't know if you can see. He's there in the background rolling around a little bit. Yeah, oh, there he is. Hello. Hello. Yeah, so if you'd like to get some more tips on how to develop a successful freelance career, then sign up to our newsletter on Substack. And each week we give out lots of tips and share our personal experience.
Yeah, you can also join our large Facebook community. There's almost 7,000 people on there. So if you do want to find and reach out to other freelancers so you don't feel so alone, and you can chat to them about what they're going to and their tips for pitching and everything else, then sign up to that and start asking questions. You can also find us on Twitter, or X if you prefer, at Freelancing4, and I'm on there as at Emma Journo.
And I'm at Lily Cantor. And finally, a big thank you to our producer, Maddie Drury.
And we'll be back with another episode next week. Bye for now.
Bye.